Chapter 2. The Journey Deeper. Pornography became a lifestyle for me. It was not an occasional slip-up. It was a daily event. Sometimes multiple times every day, and for hours on end, I would sit and gratify this sin. I hated it, and I hated myself for doing it. But I was stuck. This became one of those self-perpetuating cycles. Your self-esteem is in the toilet because of your addiction, but your addiction takes your mind off the fact that you hate yourself, and so you run back to it. You feel like dirt, or like sludge on the underside of dirty dirt. So you wallow in grief and self-pity for a while, and then run back to your tormentor for another quick fix. I'd cry out to God over and over, "Save me, help me, deliver me, forgive me, don't forsake me." But the longer this cycle continued, the more I feared that God really did forsake me. I was afraid that I got too dirty for him to use. I assumed he certainly couldn't use me or accept me the way I was. After all, I couldn't like me or accept me the way I was. And I'm not a holy God. But often, I'd have these wonderful times with God, and it seemed like I was growing in other areas of my life and walk. So it seemed like I could keep these areas of my life separate. On the surface, I was Jon, the growing Christian man that people respected. At home, I was the miserable porn addict. In church, I'd be fired up for God and certain that I would never go back to porn ever. But the temptation would come, and I'd be right back into it. Every breakthrough that I had in God, I was sure would be the crucial component that would guarantee my freedom. My logic was, if God hated my sin as much as I did, wouldn't it be the first thing on his list to fix on me so that he could actually love me and so that I could love myself? They say that insanity can be defined as doing the same thing over and over, but expecting different results. If that is an accurate definition of insanity, I'd say that I was certifiable. I can't tell you the number of times I'd tell God that was the last time, and I'd repent as hard as I could and feel good for a day or two and then be right back in it again. Sometimes I'd pick myself up right away, and other times I'd go into a self-esteem spiral and on a porn bender for days. I got bad enough that I literally couldn't be left alone. If I had any time without people around, it was almost a guarantee that I'd be in front of the computer getting fix. I'd probably want to cry if I actually calculated the cumulative hours and numbers of years of my life that were wasted gratifying this sin. But that wasn't the part that frightened me the most. The law of escalation. Every good junkie will tell you they started small, and their habit became an addiction, and their addiction became a prison. Pornography is no different. The law of escalation will affect every person who thinks they can play with this sin. If you have been struggling with this sin for any length of time, my guess is that you now watch more hardcore things than you used to. This is the path that I was also on, and it scared me. In college, there was a nice guy across the hall. Nice guy. Nice girlfriend. Not so nice addiction. A friend and I found out about this one day, and we decided to pull a prank on him. Nothing harmful. We just thought it would be funny to move all his furniture around in his dorm room when he was away for a couple of minutes. We started to move his bed and quickly discovered that the full length of the bed underneath had boxes full of porn. We quickly moved the bed back to its original location. We went to move the armchair in the corner, only to find stacks of boxes behind it as well. We went to move a smaller chair only to find the same thing. box of porn underneath that. Out of curiosity, we opened his closet, and sure enough, there was box after box in there as well. Our prank was foiled by not wanting to expose his intense addiction. A couple years later, and a couple girlfriends later, he came out of the closet and announces that he's gay. But his path to homosexuality started with porn. His porn collections, when we saw them, were straight porn. He didn't start out gay. But years of searing his conscience to sexual sins and escalation led him down a path of perversion that he could not escape. I have heard this same testimony from a number of homosexuals. Even recently, a pastor in the news who was caught with a transsexual prostitute shared this same testimony. A straight porn addiction escalated into a perversion that was insatiable. Sexual orientation is not the only way that people can dangerously escalate in their addiction. I was in a hotel lobby and a TV in the corner was interviewing a felon in jail. He was convicted for child molestation. When they asked him how he got started, it may shock some people that he started with innocent softcore porn. His response was one word: Playboy. Now this well-known enterprise doesn't have a secret underground child porn branch, nor will every person who looks at softcore become a child molestator or violent criminal. However, porn, by its very nature, induces an escalating addiction. An addiction to softcore will turn into addictions to hardcore and so on. The only way it can go is to grow. This guy kept feeding his demons, and his addiction grew and turned vile. Rapists will often have the same story: escalation. I've heard the same thing from every branch of sexual pervert and sex offender. Lust and perversion can never fill the hole in the heart that it promises to fill. No addiction can. And so when we try to meet our needs with something that can never do the trick, we must increase our dosage. It doesn't happen overnight, but it happens. Perversion takes hold and escalates the problem. And when the next level of the addiction doesn't fill the hole either, our soul searches for more perverse ways to fill the hole. You can only play with fire for too long before you start to get burned. This was the part that really scared me. My addiction began to become more and more perverted. The hatred I felt for myself began to spill over to the girls I was watching, and I began to seethe with hatred for them, and my addiction began to turn to more hardcore porn. And what I would have at one time thought too hardcore now had a perverse fascination for me. After a couple of bouts with this, I realized that this is how it starts. And if I didn't get a handle on this in 10 years, I'd be a violent criminal whose story sounded like the others. It all started innocently enough. Deeper in my addiction than ever, but with a new fear in my heart, I began what I would call the first stages of the journey out.